Welcome to the Tech Humanist Show, a multimedia format program exploring how data and technology shape the human experience. I'm your host, Kate O'Neill.
An incredibly important piece of the voice that I think, particularly in the business context, we'd like to pretend is not a thing, or at least mitigate for all of the messiness that we think is caused by having emotions inside a weird human body that does weird, annoying stuff to us. And as we go further and further into this AI world, it's those messy, nuanced things that are going to be continually setting us apart.
Casey Erin Clark is a multi-talented performer, public speaking coach, and entrepreneur who brings a unique perspective to the intersection of technology and human communication. As the founder of Vital Voice Training, Casey helps business professionals harness the power of their authentic voices to inspire and create change. Her diverse background in theater, music, and vocal coaching gives her invaluable insights into the nuances of human expression and connection in an increasingly digital world. With experience ranging from Broadway performances to Fortune 500 consulting, Casey offers a fresh take on how we can maintain our humanity and leverage our innate communication skills in the face of advancing AI and voice technologies. On today's episode of the Tech Humanist Show, Casey shares her expertise on the importance of embodied communication and the irreplaceable qualities of the human voice in our tech-driven society. Just lead us in by saying, I know you had initially sent me over these provocations via text that were, about AI versus human communication and so on. And we will get into all of those. But what I want to do is set up a question of just saying, these last few years, we've seen a rise in technology that relates to voice and communication, from smart speakers and voice assistants to now this wild surge in chatbots and conversational generative AI. So how has technology and perhaps specifically AI impacted the way we think about voice communication or human communication and the human voice?
Oh, this is such a juicy and broad question. And I want to caveat this by saying I'm not an expert on anything having to do with chatbots or AI communication or anything. I am an observer and a participant in this rapidly changing culture who specializes in how human beings communicate, most often with their voices. And I'm an actor, I'm a performer, I'm a creator. So I want to start by saying that our research as Vital Voice Training has always been about the voice as an embodied experience, as a very human, very messy, very nuanced thing that there's no clear-cut answers. There's no right way to do communication. We've all these really passionately held beliefs there. When I see things like, I'm thinking about a few years ago when Twitter put that bot on Twitter, and like within 13 hours, she was a white supremacist or something. I'm thinking about things like the fact that AI voice assistants are almost always, at least initially, until you make a different choice, coded as female. And the conversations that I've seen around that of like, why do we assume that we want a female helper? I'm even thinking about like how Apple recast the voice of Siri to be a younger sounding feminine voice. And all of this together makes me think that what I know, I guess, as a total layperson about AI communication is that it holds all the same biases that real world communication has, just amplified to like 1,000,000%, which I think is very scary sometimes to contemplate. And yet the soapbox that I've been on recently is we have to, as human beings, understand that we do still have some distinct advantages here and lean into those advantages in particular.
Well, let's back up just one step and just what are some common misconceptions that people have about the human voice and how we communicate with it?
Oh, so many. Okay. So number one, I think would be that my voice comes from my mouth or my throat. And when we say the word embodied, or when we say the phrase, the voice is a full body instrument, we're being quite literal here. The voice, yes, is created by the vibration of the vocal cords within the larynx, which, yes, is in your neck. That sound is shaped by your articulators in your mouth. But the source of the voice is breath, which is all throughout your torso. The way our voices are amplified and resonated out into the world involves bone structure and chambers kind of all through our upper body. And when we go from sort of the physical voice to, let's call it the figurative voice or the larger understanding of voice, our voices are shaped by everything that makes us human, by our past lived experiences and our present lived experiences, by the tension patterns that we hold in our body, by the social environments that we're in and what we've been rewarded for or punished about throughout our whole lives, to our emotional state, which is an incredibly important piece of the voice that I think, particularly in the business context, we'd like to pretend is not a thing, or at least mitigate for all of the messiness that we think is caused by having emotions inside a weird human body that does weird, annoying stuff to us. And as we go further and further into this AI world, it's those messy, nuanced things that are going to be continually setting us apart.
That's, such a brilliant observation. It also sounds like there's this inherent tension in the way that we treat feelings, and particularly, as you say, in a business context, but maybe just kind of broadly in general. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have observed over the 9 years of Vital Voice training that our clients exist in business scenarios, in their companies, in their offices, in their organizations, in mostly what we call a neck up world. It's how can I think my way through this problem? How can I intellectualize this problem? And how can I, as much as possible, basically cut myself off at the neck? Because everything that's happening below the neck, the shaking hands, the sweaty palms, the hot feeling of, oh my God, I'm going to blow in the middle of this meeting, or the lump in your throat that says, I might cry right now, is desperately inconvenient to us. So we either push it down and try not to feel it, or we tell ourselves that we're not feeling it. We basically gaslight ourselves. Or, and this may be the worst one, we gaslight other people and say, oh, no. I'm the cool, logical one here. And you're the emotional one, or you're the one having all the messy stuff, and I'm fine, which perpetuates some very crappy power structures.
Yeah, for sure. What is then the way that we use our bodies to communicate meaning and what we're trying to, like, how does that relationship take place, that body and voice relationship, in order to communicate what is meaningful?
Body, the emotions, the brain, and the voice have this incredibly complicated, beautiful, reflexive relationship. We think of emotions less as, oh, I'm having this particular reaction to this moment. I am angry. I am sad. I am ecstatic, whatever. And we think of them, when we begin to think of our emotions, as sensations in the body that we then add story to and add context to. We can start to, de-shame them, because nervous system activation and emotions are, keep going back to this, one of the most fundamental parts of being a human being on this planet. And in addition to de-shaming them, we can start to see them as information, like crucial information about what's happening. And we can start to go, okay, well, if I'll just use an example, the feeling of anger is heat right here in the center of my chest, or it's tension in my fists, or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that when I feel those things, I have to blow up at somebody. Like, it doesn't necessarily lead to the explosion, the cursing, the making somebody feel awful about themselves, whatever. One of the things that my co-founder, Julie, talks about all the time is how in America in particular, we have this very compacted relationship between how we feel an emotion and how we express an emotion. I feel angry, therefore I yell. I feel sad, therefore I cry, whatever. We don't actually have to take that action. We can just feel the feeling. And in fact, emotions are designed to last about 90 seconds. The sensation, the physical sensation of an emotion lasts about 90 seconds, unless we do one of two things: ruminate over it, think about it, spin it around in our head, or try not to feel it. Both of those things will actually amplify and cause that emotion to kind of calcify in that situation. So, okay, so how does that go back to the voice? As I already said, our voices are so reflexive and responsive to what we're feeling, and in particular, what we're hiding that we're feeling, what we don't want other people to know that we're feeling, which ticks in other human beings who are listening to us, either the something's off button if we're trying to hide something, or it can start to trigger a whole series of responses in other people. It's designed to, like, that response to another person's emotional state is actually baked in, and it's part of it. And it's the beautiful thing about being human. But if we're kind of lying to ourselves or others about what we're really feeling, then the rapport can't be built. The trust can't be built.
It's so interesting how you're describing it. It reminds me of Lisa Feldman Barrett, how emotions are made, right? And this whole concept of constructed emotion and the idea of like the kind of cultural constructs and the taxonomy of emotions that we create in culture. And I think what's interesting about how you're talking about it is you're also then taking it to the level of how we then demonstrate that through our voice and through the outward communication, which, I think Lisa Feldman Barrett does too in that book. But I think you're being very specific to that vocal communication and the way we outwardly communicate that. And I think that the context of having this conversation, thinking about AI and about, voice communication technology, it's such an interesting contrast to set up, right? Like there is not this same rubric on the technology side of that.
There are some really interesting MRIs that were done on a speaker who was experiencing different emotions. And again, from a purely physical standpoint, the shape of our larynx and its relationship to our pharynx and the constriction or lack of constriction in the body changes when we experience anger. So our voices sound different when we are experiencing emotion. So I think one of the things that is fascinating about these, particularly, I'll just use like AI voice assistants, like a Siri or an Alexa as an example. We get to project kind of whatever we want onto her, but she's designed essentially to be neutral. And human beings aren't neutral. We are never neutral. We aren't neutral in how we ourselves experience the world, and we are definitely not neutral in how we are perceived by other people. So, when that voiceover actress went into the studio and recorded, I would love to get a behind the scenes of how they actually record the stuff for that. How, I'm sure they have text that they read that has as many different words as possible in it. And I'm also sure that they're probably reading sentences, not just like lists of words, because you do get the song of a sentence, the basic song of a sentence with these people. Ooh, that was an interesting Freudian slip with these AI voice assistants, but it's just a little off. And there's nothing happening underneath it. So they just get to be these like neutral servants for us. Ooh, it's creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy. And it's also, I think one of the things that's reminding me of that, you talking about the neutrality of those voices and of the communication from the technology is our former guest on the show, Kim Creighton, who makes a point of saying technology is not neutral in the larger context of how technology impacts society and individuals within society. And I think that's an interesting connection too, right? The choice of a technology company like an Apple or an Amazon in coding these voices to choose certain kinds of voices, like you said, whether it's a gender question or what pitch they're at or what kind of sort of timbre comes across or whatever, like that is a very non-neutral choice that's going into that, even though, at a sort of emotional default, there is a neutrality relative to, as you're just saying, the kind of emotional tenor that comes across when we communicate. So that's an interesting set of paradoxes and contrasts as well, it seems.
I have wondered, and smarter people than me have talked about this issue already. The coding of AI assistants as the default coding of AI assistants as feminine is very interesting. The fact that if you would like to hear a man, and I know several friends who have specifically picked like a man with a sexy accent as their AI assistant, but that is a choice that you have to make specifically. And that goes to a larger question of who we see as the subject of communication and who we see as the object of communication, or who we see as the protagonist of communication and who we see as the recipient of communication. Our work started in 2014 at what we call the height of the great moral panic over vocal fry, which is this, spate of articles came out that was criticizing like the Kardashian voice, you know what I mean? Like sexy baby voice, like Belle called it. And, women's voices are just so annoying and unserious. And like, if they want to be seen as leaders, then they should definitely stop talking like this. Not that AI voice assistants talk like the Kardashians, but they tend to have a younger, feminized sound. And we see male voices so often as the default of authority, of the protagonist figure. They're the ones giving orders, not the one getting orders.
Yeah, so true. I was just, I love that you brought up the gender default on voice assistants, because we've actually extended an invitation, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have the conversation with Mark West, who is a co-author of the UNESCO report, I'd Blush If I Could, which talks about those gender defaults, but also connects it to gender and education equity and how, these things are connected. So some very, very interesting conversations, hopefully to be had on this show there. And another invitation we've extended is to X, who is the voice of Spotify's AI. And so hopefully at some point we'll be able to connect a lot of these dots. And he's done a lot of what you were talking about with recording the Siri, kind of phrases and words. And he's talked about how they're actually writing the content, the script for him to go in and record. And he wants to make it feel like himself. He wants to bring, as much of his own authenticity to it. He'll say tunes, but he wouldn't say tunes. He would say bops. He would, like those kinds of choices. So I think that's really interesting too, that we have this kind of hybrid of an actual person being AI-ized into this personality to become, this personality at scale of a DJ for every user customized on Spotify. So some very interesting twists on this discussion, hopefully to happen here in this space. What I want to do is take you back to, though, thinking about how, we started the conversation talking about voice technology and how that relates to voice and communication in the way we use it. I wonder what you think about how we can use our bodies and voices to communicate more effectively, especially in the digital age.
Well, number one, just remembering that you have a body and not trying to leave your body outside the door because it's inconvenient to you or inconvenient to the moment. Your body is a sensory goldmine. It is how we make sense of everything, both and again, the emotions being part of the functioning, the healthy functioning of the body and the brain and the body-brain connection, and the nervous system and all of that. So remembering that you walk through the world as a 360-degree human, especially after 3 years of us showing up in these little Brady Bunch Zoom boxes, is huge. Paying attention to what is happening in your body as you speak, both from the realm of, how can I maybe let go of some of the negative stuff that's happening in my body, or at least normalize it? Just say, like, there's no such thing as fearless. Our friend Mary Poffenroth, who is an incredible fear expert, talks about how saying somebody can be fearless is like saying somebody can be hungerless or thirstless. Fear and the associated physical responses to fear or nerves or stress is the most human thing about us. So rather than trying to like cut it off at the neck and not feel it, normalizing it and realizing that it's actually crucial information in the moment and it's fuel for what it is that you're actually trying to do, which is huge. Acknowledging that emotions are that sensory system that helps us make sense of what's happening and gives us insight on the unique perspective that we have on this moment and this other human being, and that it's a point of connection. We all feel angry sometimes. We all feel sad sometimes. We all feel scared sometimes. We all feel joy sometimes. Developing that empathy that, and at least until they do way more development, as far as I understand, ChatGPT cannot be empathetic, right? Human beings can be empathetic, and we must be empathetic in a shared world. And then I think, in addition to de-shaming the negative sensations of the body, leaning into the pleasure of the body. And I don't mean necessarily like sexy time pleasure. I mean like the sensing experience of the world. Touch and smell and taste and sight and sound. And not all of us have all of those senses, but like the senses that we do have are what connects us to the broader world in a way that, again, at least for now, the robots have no idea. I read this amazing piece a couple of days ago, and I meant to look it up again before this interview, where they were talking about some experiments that they had run on ChatGPT. And to be fair, this was ChatGPT 3, not ChatGPT 4. So maybe it's better at this now. But they were asking it some strange but commonsensical for a human being questions, like, you're in a situation where you need to cover your hair. Which item would you use? A sandwich wrapper or a hamburger bun? And basically the AI ChatGPT bot kept picking the wrong thing because it has no sense of weight or density or feeling. It only has context clues from the, bajillions of articles or whatever that it's read. Human beings, via our sense of touch and our sense of experiencing the physical world around us, know the difference. And again, at least for now, that is setting us apart. In addition to all the other things that are way above my pay grade, like creativity and finding different and new ideas.
Yeah, no, that's so brilliant. What you're talking about, I've seen that article that you're mentioning, and it is very entertaining and insightful about the relationship between sense making and the human experience, as opposed to how an artificial intelligence might form insights, if we even call them that, about the world. But it reminds me too of this weekend. I met a new kitten who was a friend's kitten, and it was really, really funny and fun to watch, this kitten adapt to the world and have so many, new revelations, even in the span of 10 to 15 minutes that we were in the room with him, the things that he was learning about his space. And I was thinking how fascinating to watch, a new being, but an organic being, a being that is in the world in a body, navigate the world in a body and learn very quickly how to navigate the world in a body, and how even that kitten has insights about the world that ChatGPT does not have. So that was particularly profound to me.
You used the word sense making, and I think that on first blush, a lot of really intelligent people hear the word sense making and again think of an intellectual or a logical process. And sense making as a description of how we use all 5 of our senses and our feeling body to move through the world and make sense of things in addition to our beautiful logical brains, that is hugely important.
100%. Yeah, it is. It has been a long-standing part of my work to point out that for me, meaning is the most fundamental human experience or human kind of condition, like our sense of what is meaningful, our tendency to seek meaning, our tendency to puzzle over meaning, and sometimes even at the expense of what is logical or rational or real, in terms of like conspiracy theories and that sort of thing.
Yes.
We want to seek meaning. We want to see patterns even when there might not be any that are plausible. But that means that that comes from, I think, that connection to our senses. And it is so integral to the way that our senses play into our understanding and the way that we perceive the world and comprehend the world. And so I think that is something that I think cannot be overemphasized when we think about our future alongside increasingly intelligent machines, that even as those machines spend increasing amounts of times in some form of constructed body, that there's still going to be some kind of fundamental difference there that it's really important for us to embrace about ourselves. And I think what you're describing and getting into here is such an important part of that. So I thank you very much for coming and sharing these insights with us. I want to ask you for where people can find out about your work and how they can follow up with you.
Sure. So you can go to vitalvoicetraining.com. We work with individuals on everything from keynotes and TED Talks and all of that stuff to your general communication presence in the world. We work with organizations on revolutionizing their communication culture and finding a little more humanity in the midst of everything that's coming for us, and leaning into the best of what makes us human beings as we engage with each other in the world. So yeah, vitalvoicetraining.com.
That's great. That's perfect. I want to ask you in advance to be open to being a repeat guest on the show, because I think there's so much more I know we could get into. I know you've written about authenticity, and I know we could talk so much more about how we can use our voices to promote social justice and equity and so many great things. But we'll maybe save those for another go around. How do you feel about that?
I am so into it. I always feel smarter when I'm around you, Kate. It's such a good feeling.
Well, I definitely feel like we're getting into some smart, thinky territory here, and I really appreciate you bringing it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Tech Humanist Show. This episode was produced and edited by Thrive Loud Productions, with research by Ashley Robinson and Aaron Daughtry of Interabang. You can find more information about the show's guests and links to their projects at thetechhumanist.com, where you can also find more episodes, or you can subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to all of our guests for lending their voices to help make the future a brighter place. I'm Kate O'Neill. You've been listening to the Tech Humanist Show from KO Insights.